Good evening, Wilmington, and welcome to the 2006 Selectmen's Debate. This year's debate is sponsored by WCTV and the Wilmington League of Women Voters. I'm Jim Stewart, and I'll be this evening's moderator for the debate. This year we have 4 candidates seeking 1 seat for 3 years on the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. The polls will open at 10 o'clock on Saturday, April 15th, and I encourage everyone to be part of the most democratic process in the world and get out and cast your vote for the candidate which you select. I'd like to at this time introduce the candidates for the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. Seated to my right, first Mr. Charles Fiore, Mr. George Lingenfelter, Mr. Jay Tai, and Mr. Frank West. The format this evening will be broken into 3 separate groups. The first one will last approximately 60 minutes and will consist of questions asked by 3 members of our panel from the local press. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each of those questions. The second section of our debate will last approximately 30 minutes and will consist of questions which will be asked from the audience. Those questions, the candidates will have approximately 1.5 minutes to answer those questions, and the third portion of our debate will be 2-minute closing statements from each of the candidates. I'd like to introduce the 3 members of our panel from the press this evening. First, from the Wilmington Town Crier, Mr. Stephen Bjork. From the Wilmington Advocate, Mr. Franklin Tucker. And from the Lowell Sun, Ms. Alexandra Mayer Hodal. Our timekeeper for this evening from the League of Wilmington Women Voters is Ms. Odette Kent, and I thank her for her time again this year. Let's get into it. Our first question will be asked by Mr. Bjork and will be answered by Mr. West in a process that we determined prior to the debate. Mr. Bjork.
On Monday night, the Board of Appeals granted approval for a comprehensive permit for the Crystal Commons residential project at 10 Burlington Avenue. Does Crystal Commons reflect the concept of smart growth? And if so, how does it compare with the type of development that may be engendered within the Neighborhood Activity Center Overlay District proposed for North Wilmington?
Well, as far as Crystal Commons, I think that the Crystal Commons concept does explore the smart growth activities that we've had in Wilmington. Basically, what happened was that if you look at that, what we've done is that you had an opportunity for a developer to come in. They came in with a 200-odd unit proposal, and then through working with the Board of Appeals, brought the complex down to 108 units. And also we got some mitigation out of it, and I guess there's some water service going on to a couple of the neighborhoods, a couple of the neighboring streets. As far as the Neighborhood Activity Center concept, regarding in comparison to Crystal Commons, I don't think they compare that much. I'm looking at the warrant article right here. It's warrant article number 25. And one of the things that I see is that if you look at the, as an example, if you look at the bedrooms, excuse me, the parking, the Crystal Commons, you have at least 1 parking space per bedroom plus visitor parking. Here you're looking at parking on a neighborhood activity center, and you're looking at, in some cases there's only 1 space, some only a space and a half. So there's not a real lot of parking involved down there. The other thing also is that the units themselves, you're looking at 10-foot frontages on the street. Most of the development around, like if you look at Crystal Commons, for example, one of the concessions that the developer made, Mr. Tambone, was that he was able to push the buildings in a little bit more because he didn't want the buildings right on the street. I think that the Neighborhood Activity Center, for this concept to work, I think what you really need is to work more closely with the developer, and I think that that's done through the Board of Appeals process. This Neighborhood Activity Center concept is all done through the Planning Board, and I think what it does, it takes power away from the Board of Appeals, and I strongly think that the Board of Appeals really needs to be involved in this process a lot more than what's defined in the warrant article that we see before us. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes, I also think, as far as Crystal Commons goes, that it's a project that they've obviously approved, and it is smart growth. I mean, it kind of follows the master plan. I mean, as far as where it's located regarding near transit, the transit rail, along with, it diversifies the housing for people that can't afford the big homes here in Wilmington. And there are a few other things that, you know, it does help with. And I believe the board, the ZBA had helped in following along with what the master plan is to try and get it at the best ability of that, so it fits in there without impacting the neighborhood too much. Obviously, there will be some impact in the neighborhood, and from having it that, I hope they've addressed most of the issues that the neighborhood themselves, people there, are concerned about. Obviously, we do need growth. There's smart growth as opposed to just blind growth, and I think the boards will hopefully continue to regulate it in the manner that the master plan kind of outlays it out for them. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
I think that the Crystal Commons concept did reduce itself from a high level to a lower level, which is helpful, but I believe that it located at that intersection with 62 and 38 is just too congested an area for that density of development. And although there was some mitigation and there was some discussions on reductions and it was modified, people driving through that intersection on their way home from work, it's been my experience, people are waiting through light cycles. I know there was a traffic study done, but I just believe that that's still too much density of new development at that failed intersection already. Having gone through it, I don't think I can really add a lot more to that. We could use more projects like that in town to try to reduce the increase the number of affordable units, but I just don't believe that's the right location for that project. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, I think that Crystal Commons, what it does for the town is we now reach the 10% that we're required by the state. I think everyone knows or should know that whether it's Crystal Commons or any of these other developments, we don't have a lot of options. The state carries a big stick, and they basically are going to approve them whether the town does or not. So by negotiating with the town, a lot of concessions have been made. But I think that now, with this development, we have made the 10%. So now the town will have more to say when these developments come forward from here on. Thank you.
Our second question will come from Mr. Tucker from the Wilmington Advocate, and Mr. Fiore will respond first. Mr. Tucker.
There is a long-standing New England tradition of towns having something called a town common or town center. It's where the businesses are. It's where activity is heaviest among communities. This is a two-part question. Where is the town common or town center of Wilmington? And the second part of that question is, it appears that Wilmington really could use a town center, and what would you do to facilitate that?
Mr. Fiore.
Okay, well, I know there has been a lot of question where the town common is. Obviously, they have the town common, you know, it's where the 4th of July festivities go as far as the town common. Now, it's different, obviously, than the town center. And the town center is obviously where 62 and 38 meet. Now, obviously, it's congested in there, and we've done some different things. Obviously, the new parking lot for the MBTA has been put in there, and that hopefully with that, we'll be able to develop different things in the area that meet the different needs as far as people getting to the MBTA, different types of businesses or residential stuff that's going to be built in there to accommodate people that may be able to use the Transrail and other things in the area. You obviously, I think, want to try to get things pushed off the street, but I don't know how practical that's going to be with the current buildings that are there. There is some areas there that can be moved back. And it is definitely most people think of the center, although not the town common, as a place where you can walk and do your shopping and stuff like that. There is a couple of other spots in that area that might be, they may be able to do that, but it's going to obviously take a lot of thought and ingenuity, shall we say, from different people for different types of projects. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yeah, I would have to agree with the previous speaker that the town common next to the library, and that area is really more appropriately used for government office buildings and really not development to the center of the town. It's more of a function of the inhabitants with the high school and the possibility of other town buildings in that area. The center of the town itself probably is most appropriately described as up by 38 and 62, up where the old Church Street Highway used to be. That's kind of burned out, and that's, I understand, is the property owner is looking into developing that property, and I think the appropriate location for the center of town would still be up in that area. It would have to be remodeled, I believe, at some level, with new construction and possibly redevelopment, reuse, but I still think that the center of town is at the intersection of 62 and 38, even though when we're all out trying to wave to people, we don't use that intersection anymore. We picked another spot. Thank you.
Mr. Ty.
Yes, the actual center of town actually is the common area, even though we assume that Route 38 and 62 is. And the Master Plan Committee, we had decided that if a new library was built, the place it should be built was where this building is right now. And I think that there's an attempt, and with buying the piece of property beside the library and anticipating buying another piece of property on the other side of the library, plus the property that's owned on Wildwood Street, I think that in years to come, the center of town will develop around this area here. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think in some respects, when you're looking at a center of town, you've actually in Wilmington, I think in some respects we've got three centers of town. I would say one, the geographical center, in many cases, as we all know, it is really 38 and 62. It's where our two of our major roads meet. As far as that cultural center, I would say the town common area, as Jay said, we've got the high school, the tennis courts, the senior center, the library, places where people, the arts center, the churches nearby. So you've got places where people can spend some time in a cultural standpoint. And then you've got I'd say the economic center of town, I'd say really is the plaza, in the plaza area of town. As far as, what does a selectman do to encourage businesses? I think really it's really more of a phase of economics more than what the selectman can do. As you know, like the plaza right now is being revitalized. Why? Because the developer, the people that own the plaza know there's money involved. Across the street, you're looking at the old Wilmington Ford property. That's going to be redeveloped soon into a strip mall. Why? Again, it's economics. So I don't think that the selectmen per se, by any rules or regulations, necessarily have any real input in that. I think that what we can do as residents is support the local businesses, and by selectmen and by public officials, what we can do is do what we can to encourage the growth of these businesses. As far as any vacancies, right now, Wilmington has a 5% vacancy in our business and industrial. And I think the reason being is because I think the town has done a good job to attract businesses. Part of it's the location, the commuter rail, and also 93 and 128. But again, I'll just say one last time that I think that it's more the economics of the area that define how successful businesses will be and how businesses will improve over the coming years. Thank you.
Our next question will come from Ms. Mayor Hodol from the Lowell Sun, and Mr. Lingenfelter will respond first.
Yes, thank you. With the library having been rejected by voters recently, what capital improvement projects do you think could and need to become a reality? What have you done, or what will you do to initiate them?
Mr. Lingenfelter.
I think that with the rejection of the library, the voters really said that they really didn't want to have another debt exclusion at the current time. And I don't think I would really go out as a selectman and say, okay, they don't want a library, what do they want? And go out and make motions and activities towards building that. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think we need to follow through on the studies that are in process, I believe, to determine what it is that we actually need. And based on the results of those studies, surveys, and polling of town officials, make a determination as to what would be most appropriate, if anything. I mean, the North Wilmington substation's been mentioned several times. That's been hanging out there for a long time. That might take consideration over other things in town that might want to be built. I'm not so, as I said, I'm not really sure as a selectman that I would go out on a mission to try to spend that money elsewhere. The voters are pretty clear that they did not want a new library at this time. I think maybe unless one of those studies says there's an urgent need for something, I would just, perhaps on new construction, lay a little low on pushing a new project and just try to focus our efforts on increased public building maintenance to try to ensure that what we do have will last us in service as long as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, I think it's time that we seriously take a look at a sub-fire station. I think that we need it. I think that there's an article in the town warrant asking the voters to appropriate $55,000 for a study. And one of the areas that seems to be the most popular is the area close to the Hardin Tavern. There's about 13 acres there, and the feeling is that that might be the best spot for a substation. And also, it would be large enough so that in the future, we could also move the water department there, which building is very, very old, and the highway department building, which is in deplorable condition right now. So I think that is something that's going to happen. I'm not sure the timetable, but if, for example, it was approved at the town meeting to spend the $55,000, it's going to take 2 or 3 years by the time they go out for bids. But I think that's a priority that we have to think about, and I think it's actually time for that. There is another piece of property that at the North Reading line, where the North Reading Sanatorium is, there's a 5-acre parcel of property that is owned by the town of Wilmington. We also might take a look at that. But I think it's time for us to seriously think about a substation. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I think one of the things that I did as a sitting selectman is that I introduced the purchase of the Lyford property, which is the house to the left of the library that Mr. Tai just mentioned a moment ago. I think it was the foresight of the Board of Selectmen and the town to purchase that property as it was becoming available. And this way here, it could be used for an expansion of the library at its current site or for another use with an expansion of the library building. One of the other things as a member of the Board of Selectmen that we asked the town manager to prepare is a capital assessment plan which covers the next 5 years on what the department heads feel are their priorities. One of the things that came in that, as Jay said earlier, was the fire substation, which I wholeheartedly support. That's Article 10 in our town meeting, Article 11 at our town meeting. The other capital improvements that we're looking at, if you look at town meeting, you're looking at Article 10, which is to evaluate the system-wide needs in the school system. This gives us an idea overall of what we're looking for our school needs, and also Article 9, when we're looking for our storm drainage master plan. So this gives us an idea of what's going on with the storm drainage for the water within the community. A couple of other things that I'm looking at, number one is that I'm looking at the playground that we're talking about, the Shawshene School. Again, is that a high dollar thing? No. But I think for the $50,000 that we're looking to appropriate at town meeting, plus looking for an additional $50,000 of grant money, donation money, and then hopefully another $50,000 from recreation, I think we can have a first-class playground over at the Shawshene School. And I think, well, again, I'll just say again, I think that this capital assessment plan that, not only have we looked at, but we've actually met, the Board of Selectmen met recently with the town manager and the department heads to go over this book and to see what the needs are. And I think probably the last thing I'll just touch upon real quick, because I just got a few seconds, is the intersection of Glen Road and Middlesex Ave, which, again, the selectmen have been proactive at. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes, as far as like the library, the voters definitely showed what they wanted. The question kind of is on what, if anything, why they voted the way they did. Did they vote it because they didn't want to pay any more money on it? Did they vote it because they didn't feel that we need a new library? So it has to be determined as far as that. I think it's a little bit of both. So with that out of the way, I think the priority right now is the fire station, the sub-fire station in North Wilmington. I think the people down there deserve it, among other things, for that area. And there is obviously the study on the town warrant now that's looking at doing that study. There's some controversy on whether that's how that study should be done and how much should be done and what should be done with it. I mean, but it makes sense that the main purpose of it is for a fire substation. And if other town buildings that has already been mentioned down in that area, that depending on how the fire station is built would determine what else might need to be done down there with the other buildings that are down there. So The study hopefully will help us determine what is done. I also believe part of the question is, if in fact we do go for another building, how could we pay for it? Well, I know the Mills Corporation down there is talking about building over there in Tewksbury and some stuff coming on the Wilmington side. And there may be possible revenues that we can get out of that to assist in paying for that. And there's always grants or other types of local aid that we can look into to see what monies are available to help pay the cost of the fire station. Thank you.
Our next question will come from Mr. Bjork, and Mr. Ty will respond first.
Well, this is the perennial question. Following the reappointment of the town manager, a new contract is being negotiated. The negotiation process has been identified by one candidate as a priority. How would you have voted in the reappointment of the town manager, and what changes would you propose to the existing contract, if any?
I would have voted for reappointment, and I'm not privy to any of the contracts, so I really can't answer that, but hopefully, if I'm successful, I will be involved in that. But I don't know any of the details. I do know that I think that a town manager should be paid more than the superintendent of schools. I think there's more responsibility running a whole town than the school system. But other than that, I'm not privy to any of the negotiations that are going on. I think they're going on right now with one of the candidates here, so maybe he could answer that better, but I don't know. Thank you.
Mr. West?
Well, I think it's, in some respects, it's a unfair question to me at this point, being one of the committee of two, being with Selectman McCoy, that's actually was appointed by Chairman Laporte to negotiate the town manager's contract. But a couple of things that I will say, and just so the public is aware that Mike McCoy and I have met with the town manager once. We were supposed to actually meet today to go over some other items on the contract. And unfortunately, Mr. McCoy was ill, so we're going to postpone that for a date certain. But one thing I will say is that certainly the town manager salary right now is $115,000. The superintendent of schools, I think, gets about $135,000. So to jump in salary from $115,000 to say $140,000, again, it's part of negotiation, but it's something that I probably wouldn't be in favor of. The things that I will say is that a couple of items that I had supported 3 years ago when I first ran was, one, the 3-year buyout that Mr. Kyra had in his contract. At the time of the contract was let and the time that I ran the first time, I will say that I did not stand in favor. I was not in favor of a 3-year buyout. Most town managers get 90 to 120-day buyouts, and again, I'll just say at that point in time, that's how I felt. The other thing also that I felt 3 years ago when I ran was a review process for the manager. I felt at that time that most people who are employed get reviewed on an annual basis by a supervisor. Mr. Kyra has 5 supervisors, so again, at that time, I felt that there should have been a formal review process, some sort of standardized, review, and he gets rated on that and gets his raise by that. But again, those were things that I felt 3 years ago, and after the negotiations are complete, and hopefully they'll be complete before the election, we'll know a little bit more about how I feel today. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore?
I believe I would have, I know I would have voted in favor of his contract, as I've already stated in the paper and things of that nature. I mean, if you look at the fiscal health of the town compared to other towns around us over the past few years, how can you say that he hasn't done a good job? I mean, I know there are some personality problems and things of that nature, but all in all, if you look, like I said, at just how much we have compared to other towns and their debt and things of that nature and what we've been able to do, he's kind of run the budget good and the town good, and he basically does what I can see from where I'm sitting anyways. I don't know, there are, like I said, some people on the other side thinking differently. If I get there, hopefully I will, I can see things and make my own personal opinions on whether he's doing a good job or not. But from the outside, with the way the town is, physical budget, I just feel that he's done a good job, and I don't see why I would not have appointed him. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Yes, I feel that the town manager has done a largely an adequate job as being the financial manager of the town, but I would not have voted to reappoint him if I had had the chance to vote. I've been to a lot of the selectmen's meetings over the last year, 2 or 3 years, I guess, really, since I was on the CAP, and it appears to me as though the town manager isn't always responsive to people from the audience asking questions. The Board of Selectmen oftentimes direct him to do things, and if you follow up as a regular attendant of the meeting and you ask a meeting or two later if the actions were followed up on, they often weren't. There was a particular situation where a selectman asked the town manager a question from informational purposes, and that question showed up as an agenda item. So there were a lot of things that I felt as though were inappropriate for the town manager. His actions just were not appropriate in the capacity of town manager. They were more in the capacity of if he were a mayor or a sixth selectman. And I think part of that might just come from the length of time that the town manager has in fact been town manager, that it's probably natural to feel as though that you're a little bit more than town manager. And I think it would be much more helpful for the town, for the Board of Selectmen to take the lead and be the leaders of the town and provide leadership to the town manager. And I've heard several questions asked of him at recent meetings about moving forward with plans for projections of activities and expenditures to be made. And it doesn't, in my estimation, appear as though that the town manager has always been as responsive to those kind of questions if he didn't choose to be. And I think that the Board of Selectmen needs to be more forceful and demand an answer more than they have. You know, the town's led by the Board of Selectmen, not the town manager. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Mr. Tucker, and Mr. West will respond first. Mr. Tucker.
Yes, hello, Mr. West. This has not been a nasty campaign. In fact, everybody's been really positive in talking about themselves. In fact, when your opponents do talk about you, they use terms that make you appear to be more of a passive individual. One opponent even called you warm and fuzzy. I never knew that was a pejorative term, but it seems to, I don't know why that was used, but how would you describe how you how you work on the Board of Selectmen, and how is that effective? And for your opponents, what would your style be if you were on the Board of Selectmen?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Lichtenfelder for comments about being warm and fuzzy, and actually I'd also like to thank Mr. Ty for wearing my campaign button last Saturday when he was holding signs out there up at Brooks. But, you know, as far as, you know, people saying that I have a passive style, I mean, you know, my take is I'd rather talk about the issues. I'm not going to get into a lot of the bickering, and I try to stay away from what's given us marathon meetings in the past. As you know, there's two selectmen that, you know, kind of go back and forth a little bit, and, you know, part of what I'm looking to do is to get the issues done. I mean, if it takes me 2 minutes to talk about something as opposed to 20, I'd rather spend the 2 minutes. I think my voting record is my real record. I mean, if you want to talk about floor time, hey, I would say I probably get the least amount of floor time, because I'm not looking for the floor time. I'm looking to get the issues done. I'm looking to get the vote, you know, to vote for the residents, and you know, and work that way, and hopefully get us out of there in short order if we can do that. But again, a lot of what I'm looking to do is just, you know, get the vote done. And I'll give the rest of the time to my opponents. I'll even give it to them here.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes, I agree with you. It has been a pretty nice campaign. I think that's the way it should be. That way we can all come across and show what we're about, as opposed to getting any kind of bickering over something. So, and I think as far as being on the board, we would be able to try and work together, which I believe I've shown that I can do over the years on the Housing Authority. And by working together and solving the problems, and not just having arguments, shall we say, over certain little things. We just got to try to continue to move forward on the board, and by bringing up the issues and resolving them without bringing them back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Once something's been resolved, we should move on to the next thing. It shouldn't just be brought up again and again and again. And that's what the type of person that I am for that. As far as, I won't say that I'm passive. I think if something needs to be called upon, if there's a call, or a judgment call, I'm not afraid to stand up for what I think is right, but I at least try to get all the facts and rationally make a decision. I don't just jump to conclusions, and I would hope that's the way I would continue to do it with, if I'm on the Board of Selectmen, to do that and then move on and try and progress and make the town better. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yes, I'm an environmental professional, and I have 18 years' experience, and I quite often am put in adversarial situations with property owners and environmental attorneys, and a lot of dollar value involved, and people accusing other people of having impacted their properties, and real estate transactions with environmental problems, and they can be very confrontational at times. And so I have experience in dealing with those situations, and I've found in my experience that by not getting into arguments with people, but introducing facts and reality and trying to be calm, and when someone has obviously reached a dead end, you try to shift without changing the topic exactly, but you can shift the conversations in ways that you might be able to diffuse the crux to the argument and try to move ahead. And at some point, you might just reach a loggerhead, and there really isn't any point to continue the argument, and I've seen that at the Board of Selectmen meetings. And it might just be more appropriate on some occasions to just table a specific issue or matter until another night, and perhaps, the same people could talk about the same topic in a little bit more calm and rational manner. I would be a strong character, though. I don't cower down, and I think that I usually have pretty good command of my facts. And if I was on one side of an argument and someone else was on the other side of the argument, I wouldn't change my position or my opinion just to end the argument. I would find a way to win the argument or have the other person understand why they're wrong. And if I couldn't do that immediately, like I said, I would try to make a motion to perhaps table a specific issue or a specific element if possible. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, I think that I can bring some continuity to the board. I think the meetings are much too long. I think there's too much bickering, and I'm opposed to all the executive sessions that they go into. And I think that when they do go into executive sessions, when the time is up, I think some of the information should specifically be brought forward to the people. And I think that some of the members of the Board of Selectmen should realize that they are the town manager's boss, and I'm not sure they realize that.
Ms. Mayor Hodol will ask the next question, and Mr. Fiore will respond first.
Yes, another issue this year is obviously the town's high legal costs. What is your plan for reining them in?
As far as the legal costs for council, I know that there's been some controversy on that. As far as town council itself goes, it seems that they've been doing an adequate job. There's obviously some people that say yes, some people that say no. I know that Mr. Dan, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, from the Dershowitz and Williams there, he's done a very outstanding job with the NET, the Transrail, as far as holding that in check, shall we say, and keeping that above board. So with that in mind, and there's other things that excuse me a minute here, collect my thoughts. It seems like they're doing a fine job, and once again, just as I said with the town manager's position, I'd have to get in there to see. I mean, there are different ways with the high cost. I know that it seems like if I'm not mistaken, the cost for the town attorney is like doubled in the last 2 to 3 years. So that there's got to be something going on there. I understand there's been argument about, well, because of certain issues that has brought them costs up. But there's got to be ways of reining some of that money in, and we just have to sit down and try to figure it all out and hopefully get the costs down and still get the service that we need. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yeah, I've been to several of the Board of Selectmen meetings just by chance where the town council was discussed, and I think there's been some unfounded attacks on the integrity of Paul DeRensis, our current town council, that were not necessary. I think a lot of the costs that we keep hearing about aren't really the nature of the town council. It's the way the town council has been used, where he had to attend a lot of meetings where it probably wasn't necessary, and a lot of his time was used up and how he was asked by the Board of Selectmen to do things. It was also my impression that the town manager and the town council had some friction that, in my opinion, seemed to be based more on the attitude of the town manager, and that probably wasted a lot of time. You also can't compare the annual cost of the town council's retainer. Wilmington has some very unique situations in town with NET, Olin, and the Maple Meadow landfill. And I think all three of those significant legal costs need to be incurred by the town for the long-term protection of the quality of life in this town, and they're separate from the annual operations of a normal town. Within the normal operations of the town, we also have a pending case, which I believe is generally referred to as the Murphy case, from a Wildwood Street land taking by eminent domain, which has been kind of a boondoggle for the town, that was inherited by the current town council. And I think they've been doing a good job representing us, but that's also maybe not as much as the three, Maple Meadow, Olin, and NET, but it's been a significant cost to the town. It was something that was inherited, and you just can't compare the costs of these significant things with town council. The old town council, I believe, was paid the last town council, not old town council, $132,000, which included a salary and an additional $20,000 from the water department, and current town council is $142,000, and that's not unreasonable. Thank you.
Mr. Ty.
Yes, I think we should retain the present council that we have, and I think that we have to get involved with this well situation. Everyone probably knows that of the 9 wells we have in town, 5 of them we cannot use. They're contaminated. I think that there are a lot of other lawsuits in town that are unnecessary, and I don't mean Olin, and I don't mean the dump, but there are other lawsuits that, in my opinion, are frivolous, that people don't even know about, and I think we should be looking at those instead of zeroing in on Olin and the dump. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Thank you. Just for clarification, I know the law firm that we have is Deutsch Williams, and the town council's name is Paul Durensis. Couple of things regarding the town council. Number one, I was on the Board of Selectmen when we first appointed Mr. Durensis, and I continue to support the law firm of Deutsch Williams. Couple of the items that Mr. Ty just touched upon was executive session, and the fact that we have a lot of executive sessions. Well, I think what you need to do is you need to look at the title of the executive sessions, and a lot of it is ongoing litigation. So it's stuff that has to be discussed in executive session, because what we don't want to do is to tip our hat on to our opponents on what the strategy is, especially in things regarding Olin, Maple Meadows, and the New England Transrail. I mean, you figure right now at New England Transrail, they've got big hitters. They've got Baker Barnes that's representing New England Transrail, and I'll bet you that they're paying a lot more than $170 an hour. Just so that people know is that I have a breakout of the environmental issues in town, and from January to January of last year to January of this year, the legal fee was $148,000, and specifically items that resolve around Maple Meadows, Olin, and New England Transrail. And to give you an idea, just real quick, is that in the 2002 town report, when former town council Mike Newhouse was working here, he said right in the annual town report that on average his law firm was spending 35 to 40 hours a week, and that was about 1,950 hours. And he's saying that it would have been at $125 an hour, the legal fee would have been $243,000. The legal, just so you'll know, the retainer is $54,000 is all we're paying for retainer, and beyond that, everything else is legal issues. And we are working hard, and that's why we go into executive session as often as we do. And when we can report to the public, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Mr. Bjork, and Mr. Lingenfelter will respond first.
Assuming you are elected to the board, what specifically do you hope to have accomplished 3 years from now?
If I was elected to the board 3 years from now, I would like to be able to say that we have a different town manager in town. I'd like to say that we were able to achieve our 10% quota at the next census tract for the 40B. I'd like to say that the Wilmington citizens that went into Town Hall and tried to deal with the building and health department all came out of there and said that they were treated fairly. And that doesn't mean everybody gets what they want, but it's been my experience that the people that deal with a lot of the inspectional services in town don't always get a fair shake. And I think that the culture of the town hall needs to change. And as a selectman, starting from the top down, I would like to be able to change the culture of town hall. And I think that a selectman that has an interest in town that's subject to the inspection from the town hall really can't do that. And we have too many members on the board that depend on the goodwill of the town hall too much, I think. There are a lot of things I think that I could probably try to do. Those were the things that come off the top of my head. There are everyday things that the selectmen have come before them and vote. If you were going to talk about specific initiatives that would be brought about, that would kind of depend on what the gist of the population people were asking and talking about. You would have to listen to the public and try to find out what it is that they were looking for. And I think that you would have to be in office for at least a few months to receive specific questions and calls and answers and opinions to really formulate what the community actually wants the Board of Selectmen to do. It's not really what the board wants to do, it's what the town wants the board to do for them. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, at my age, I'll be happy to be alive in 3 years. So if I accomplish that, that will be my first goal. My second goal is the taxes. Taxes are a problem. I think that the health care is an absolute killer. I think that we should get together with surrounding towns and maybe we can do something about the health care. We have to do something. Also, we have $30 million in unfunded pension money that's due. So we just have to do something drastic to handle some of these issues. And as you know, right now, the citizens pay 58% of the tax burden, and industry pays 42%. We have to meet with our legislators and try to do something about that. Thank you very much.
Mr. West.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a quick comment on the taxes is that as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I voted consistently to push as much of the tax burden over to industrial and commercial as we could legally. That was through the recommendation of the town accountant. And again, every year we voted to push the maximum amount over to industry. So I just wanted to say that. A few of the things that I'm looking for that I'd like to see over the next 3 years. One, I think that we need to continue to fight the Transrail proposal. I think that's a priority in this town and a priority to South Wilmington, but not only South Wilmington, the entire town in general. I think also is that I'd like to see the landfill over at Maple Meadows capped. Hopefully, like right now, we filed an appeal as it's well known and documented. I'd like to see if we can get the appeal, that appeal should be settled, and hopefully we can get that capped legally. We have the EPA working to hopefully get the Olin property on a Superfund status so we can get that worked. A couple of things that I'd like to see also is that being a former member of the Historical Commission, I'd like to see the town purchase the Butters Farm property. I think it's important that we have a bit of our history going back to us. And I think that if the way that the Historical Commission wants to do it, which is basically purchase it, renovate it, and then sell it back to somebody with historical easements, I think is a smart way to go. So we're not really buying the property, we're actually just kind of borrowing the property for a short time. I'd also like to see the fire substation worked on in North Wilmington, and also the results of the school and municipal buildings studies. But I guess probably last of all is that I'd like the residents of the community to say, you know what, he was accessible to the community. Every time his number's listed in the phone book, his website his email address is the only website email address that's listed for any selectman member in the town website, and I'm being told to stop.
Thank you, Mr. West. Mr. Fiore.
Thank you, yeah. Some of the goals that I'm hoping to accomplish, there's no question about the environmental issues down there. We have to stay on top of them. They've been talked at length here, but there's a few other things, like obviously the budget. With the budget, we need to, find different ways of supplementing it so it doesn't cost our residents as much. As Frank has stated, as far as shifting some of the tax burden over to the commercial and business, taking full advantage of the different laws, tax laws that'll allow us to do that. There's also other ways as far as like local aid. with local aid, funny thing, I was looking at one of the books there, and in local aid, just going through local aid for the school systems, as far as the school districts, as far as each district, they have a per pupil amount. And we right now are getting $941 per pupil for local aid. And towns around us, like Bill Rick is getting $2,083. The Shawshene Tech is getting $2,545. Tewksbury is getting $2,552. I mean, I don't know for sure what their formula is, but I think we need to get with our legislators and redo that, because even if not being greedy, if we just double our $941, that would increase the local aid just on the pupils alone up to $3.6 million or more. I mean, and I don't think that's asking too much. Even if we doubled our pupils, it'd still be less than those 3 districts that I mentioned. Right now, we are, out of the 325 districts, that puts us at 295 roughly, and I know our school system is not ranked that. It's a lot higher than that, so it is definitely something we have to work on as far as that goes. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Mr. Tucker, and Mr. Ty will respond first.
We have 3 business people running for selectmen. And then many times when we talk, when there are campaigns for local issues, business and business expansion is usually pushed off to the side for more specific reasons. What would you do if you were elected to the board to expand, to promote business expansion, noting that Wilmington has a number of world-famous businesses already in town, like Analog Devices and Charles River Labs?
Mr. Ty.
Well, first of all, in Wilmington, there's only 3% vacancy in all the buildings. We're very fortunate because we're so close to 93 and 128. And some other towns that don't have the highways going through them that we do have some problems. We actually don't have any problems. As soon as they put buildings up, they're rented. And with the 3% vacancy rate, which has been confirmed by the principal assessor, I think we're in good shape. And it's actually taking care of itself. As soon as they put a building up, they're rented. I don't think we can ask for much more than that. It's all based on the fact that we're blessed with 93 and 128 being that close. And I don't think there are many towns that have 5 exit off it as we do.
Are there too many businesses in Wilmington right now?
Pardon me?
Are there enough businesses in Wilmington?
Is that a question for all 4?
Yes.
I think there is room for expansion, but we do have a tremendous industrial base in Wilmington, and we're very fortunate to have that. But there is room for expansion. Thank you.
Mr. West?
Thank you. As a local business owner and also as a member of the local Chamber of Commerce, I say that a lot of what Wilmington has to do is maybe the local officials can work with the Chamber of Commerce to talk about ways to promote Wilmington. As Jay said, we've got 5 exits off at 93. We've got 2 commuter rails in town. Our commercial tax rate is low, low relatively speaking. I got the camera here and you're here. I think that, working, I think is, and again, I'll compliment what I said earlier and what also Mr. Ty said, is that I think that, if you build, they will come. As far as, are there too many businesses in Wilmington? Well, no, I think there are room for more businesses. I mean, there's not a Dunkin' Donuts on my street yet. There are, 6 now, I think, in our community. But, again, I think what happens is I think it's purely economical. I think what happens is that somebody comes up with an idea, gee, I want to open XYZ store, or business. If they do their research and they look at the demographics of the town and look at, the type of population that's here, they'll open and hopefully they'll be successful. We do have from time to time, we have vacancies in our stores and vacancies in our industry. But I think what happens is that over the long run, I think what happens is that people look and they say, wow, Wilmington's a place that I want to be. I mean, my wife and I, when we decided to open our business, and we've kept our business for almost 12 years now here in Wilmington, and, we enjoy the town. And again, I think working through the Chamber of Commerce, maybe we can help promote the town, and work together in that fashion. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Yeah, I think we have a very strong base as far as the industry. We have several different industry parks that bring things into us, and there is room for some growth, not a lot, but with what we have left as far as land goes, we just need to use smart growth. What we have left in some of the places that we are doing, just get the right stuff in there that brings taxes. Different types of industry bring different types of tax. So we want to try and keep on and bring in the right stuff, the right businesses to get the best bang for our buck, so to speak. I mean, and now, as I've mentioned before, the Mills Corporation talking about possibly putting 2 hotels over there near the Tewksbury line there. If we can get that in, I think that's minimal impact on the town, the residents, but it can bring a very large amount of money to us. And the same with like the overlay district that they're proposing in North Wilmington. I think those types of businesses in there would bring more money than some of the current businesses down there with the warehouse style, things of that nature. And so we just got to keep on looking at it and trying to promote the right types of businesses into town that bring us the best amount of money. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
I think there probably already is a fair amount of business in town, as Mr. Ty pointed out. And I'm kind of more in favor of, rather than actively going out and seeking new business, that we really should focus on letting the market forces work out their own needs and just try to facilitate that. We need to, through such vehicles as the master plan, regulate where new business comes in and how it's allowed to grow and develop. But because we do have the unique situation in Wilmington, we have such a strong business base already based on decisions that were made in the past, and I believe the term was mentioned that there's a 3% vacancy rate. That doesn't really leave a lot of room for or a need for to actively go out and seek new businesses, at least in my estimation. And I also don't believe there's a lot of open space left that would invite a new business to come in for new construction. We're moving in towards the redevelopment phase where there may be some buildings that they could redevelop and change the use of. But as far as what we need to do to actively go out and get business, I think the market forces will take care of themselves, and we can just facilitate them and do what we need to do to make it inviting for them to change what we have in ways that will be most beneficial for the residents and maintain a residential character. I'm not in favor of the current overlay district as it's described in the Warren article, mostly because I don't believe that the public review process has been sufficient. That was kind of, at least in my estimation, was sort of pulled out of the hat at the last minute. It was talked about at the Joint Planning and Finance Committee meeting, but it really, I think, has a lot of questions to be answered. It needs more public involvement before we should actually go to town meeting and vote on that. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Ms. Mayor Hodal, and Mr. West will respond first.
Yes, Mr. West already brought up the Butters Farm, and there's a warrant article for this year's town meeting. How will you vote on that warrant article, and are you ready to spend up to $450,000 on this?
Sure. I think I kind of answered my question. I think I kind of answered that question partially already. Do I support the purchase of the Butters Farm? Yes, I do. I think it's important that we have 2 choices. We could either purchase it, preserve it, renovate it, and sell it back with historical restrictions, or we could see it knocked down. As a former member of the Historical Commission and a lifelong resident of Wilmington, I think we owe it to our children to preserve such a building. Being an officer in the Wilmington Minutemen, we the Minutemen took the lead to fundraise for the farm. We were able to recently do a spaghetti supper and a raffle. We were able to present the Historical Commission with the check for, I believe it was $4,000. We were also fortunate enough to receive a commitment from the state for $70,000. So it's really not $450,000 we're looking at this point. The other thing also is that when it's purchased, hopefully it'll be purchased at town meeting, and when this happens, we can look for more grant money. So hopefully we won't be looking at a lot of actual dollars out of the town. And again, if the money's, if the property's sold, which is what I believe the Historical Commission's intention is, that money will come back to the town. So I think it's a wise investment. I think it's an investment for our future. The last thing that I will say is that some people say that, you know, that the developer said that they would move the property or actually pour a foundation and have the property moved, you know, probably, you know, to an adjacent parcel. I would disagree with doing that, and the reason being is that in order to do so, and I've toured the Butters Farm in its entirety, inside and out, what you'd have to do, number one, you'd have to probably tear half of it down, which is the kitchen and the bath sections, in order to move it. And I think that that's a mistake, because that's obviously a good chunk of the building, and I think that the building on site has been there for 323 years. I think it should stay. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes, I'm also in favor of preserving it. It's part of our history, obviously, and it should be, do what we can to save it. All I can say is that it's, from what they've been talking about and listening to the meetings and being at the meetings, I think the Historical Commission themselves have been doing an outstanding job in finding different ways and avenues to pay for it. I mean, you know, with Secretary Galvin's office giving the money there, the Minutemen, Frank raising different fundraisers money, and there's still ongoing things going on. And there will be more things, I'm sure, going on. So I don't know if the figure that's currently on the line item to buy that is going to be what we're going to be passing at town meeting, but even if it is, I think it will get some of that back. And then once we get more, once we do that, hopefully town will pass that, and if it's that, there'll be all different kinds of grant money to improve the place, and once it's all fixed up, I believe, from what I've been hearing at the meetings, that it looks like they would want to resell it with some restrictions, historical restrictions on it. And I would think somebody else would pay some monies, it's going to be worth some value, maybe not the full 400 and something, but I don't think that's what we were going to end up paying in the long term after everything's said and done with the different grant monies and things of that nature going on. But it's definitely something that I think is part of Wilmington's history, and we should definitely keep it, and I think we should keep it there as opposed to trying to move it. Thank you. Mr.
Lingenfelter.
Yes, I'm definitely in favor of coming up with the funds at town meeting to save the Butters Farm. It's been there for hundreds of years. It's unique to its location because it does have tunnels under it where people have constructed their escape routes from the Indians. And we've been to many selectmen meetings where we've heard a lot of discussions about the historical significance and importance and the various unique features to the building. As other people have said, it's really not the full amount. It's not what the town has to pay. It's more of a short-term loan. The Historical Commission people are actively seeking additional grants, and I really believe that it should be saved, and we can come up with the money, and I look at it as more of a short-term loan to ourselves to save part of our history, and we should definitely do it. Thank you.
Mr. Ty.
I was opposed to it. Now I've heard some things that are in the works. I know that the developer, Mr. Langone, has extended the purchase and sales agreement until, I think, November, to give the people the opportunity to raise more money. I've heard about some easements that are going to go on it that might make it saleable, but the bottom line is there is the option of Mr. Langone has offered a piece of property that it could be moved, maybe 100 yards. I'm not sure that that's the best way to do it. I'm still not satisfied with what's going to be proposed at the town meeting. But I do know that to renovate it the way it has to be renovated, they're saying it's $150,000, and I cannot believe that you could do it for that. So I've gone from being opposed to spending the money to convince me. You have to convince me, and
We'll talk.
I'm leaning that way. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the first portion of our debate this evening, which I'd like to take a moment and thank our members of the press panel for joining us this evening. Before we go off to the second portion of our debate, which will be questions from the audience, we're going to take a quick 1-minute break, grab a cup of coffee, tuck the kids in, but come right back because we'll be back in just a minute.
Backfield, 3 receivers out. And here comes the snap. Quarterback back looking for a receiver. Here comes the pressure. He does get it away. He's got an open receiver, and it's... If bills currently before the United States Congress pass, you won't see your local team or your government or local events and news on this TV channel. These bills will end the funding source for this and other local channels. Don't let local access become Won't See TV. Go to www.alliancecm.org or www.savemyfreespeech.net and contact Congress now. Otherwise, this is all you'll see here soon.
A minute means a minute. We're back. The first question from the audience, and Mr. Fiore will answer first, is the MWRA is projecting an 8 to 10% rate increase for its water member communities. With Wilmington on the verge of joining the MWRA water supply system, what plans do you have to prepare residents for dramatic increases in the cost of water?
Okay, I understand there's no question there's been many concerns about us paying a high rate compared to other communities, and we definitely need to go on it. I'm not sure how they figure it out, but how they figure the formula for what they charge us. I know more than likely we are going to end up going on with them. Hopefully, when we do, it'll be Olin that pays for it. And we just need to find out and keep on board with what they're doing and how they're determining what the rates are and why Wilmington seems to be paying more than other communities, because it's obviously not fair. Everybody has heard about it, and we just need to get very active with the people at the MWRA in finding out what we can do to kind of spread the cost out a little more fairly. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
Yes, I think that it's unfortunate that we've been forced into a connection with the MWRA. I think that was a little bit beyond our control. There have been a lot of forces or personalities in town that have advocated that's the answer and just kind of abandoned the 5 wells that are shut down. I personally have not given up on restoration of the aquifer or bringing some of the wells back online. I think by being able to bring some of the wells back online, if possible, would help to decrease the cost of water. It's a very complicated question because it's an easy answer. Just hook up to MWRA and we'll be all set. But the million gallonage of water that's going to come through this new connection is not going to adequately serve the town. We do still have production in North Wilmington, and I'm a little bit at a loss as to why we are moving ahead with lots of new construction when we're having water bans. And I'm missing something, I think, in the translation as to why the shortage of water wouldn't affect construction of new buildings and new development. There's also, I think, the increased threat of the world we live in today. Nobody's going to come, I don't believe, and do any kind of a terrorist attack in Wilmington, but they might on an MWRA water source because there's a lot of people out there. And I think it's even our own safety to have our own well fields, because I really don't think anyone is going to bother us except our own backyard polluters. And they ultimately, they are the ones that are responsible for the problem that we're in. And through the continued good service of our legal counsel, we should pursue our claim against them and try to put as much of the burden of the cost increases to MWRA towards those responsible for as to why we're buying that water. And it's not exclusively Olin, but largely is Olin. And I think that we need to move forward with not making plans to just hook up to the water and we're done, but pursue Olin and try to recover costs from them. Thank you.
Mr. Tighe.
Yes. I don't think we have a choice. I think we have to hook into the MWRA, and I know that Olin has committed to $3 million, and I understand the cost of running the water is going to be about $4 to $4.5 million, and they're hoping that Olin will agree to pay the additional cost. I guess they had an agreement with Olin years ago, and it's taken so long to get the approval through the city of Woburn. But for those that aren't aware of it, all the MWRA water comes from the Wachusett Reservoir, or the Quabbin Reservoir out in Worcester. It comes into Boston, and then it comes out to us. We have no choice. We have to hook in, and there is based on the amount of water that Wilmington uses, there's an $8 million charge to the MWRA that we're responsible for in order to hook into their water. That's their fee. We can pay that over several years, but that's what it's going to cost us, and we have no choice. Thank you.
Mr. West.
Regarding the MWRA water, I think that most people in town would probably agree, unfortunately, that we can't supply our own water anymore because of the 5 wells being shut down in South Wilmington. I think that a couple of things that we need to look at first is that we need to look, have our Water and Sewer Commission, along with the Water Department, look maybe and see if there's other sources that we can find water, possibly in North Wilmington, maybe at the 48, Camp 40 Acres area or somewhere in and around that area, that there might be more sources of water that we could tap into. Regarding in the interim, what we've been doing right now is that we've been buying water off of both Burlington and Woburn, and we've been getting reimbursed back for the water. The Wilmington Board of Selectmen, we recently entered into an agreement with Woburn so that we could tie into the MWRA for an emergency service so that they could help out in the a lot of times, especially in the peak water demands. As far as the long-term solution, right now, I think that I'd love to see us try and get the wells that we have, try to either get them back online in some fashion, or see if there's other sources that we can purchase water from that, that we can develop on our own. I'd love to see us keep our own water supply, or at least keep some semblance of a water supply so that we don't have to hook into MWRA. Regarding the membership fee that Jay was talking about, the $8 million, if we were to become a full-time MWRA community, which right now we're not, we're hooking in for an emergency connection. If we were to become a full-time emergency connection with MWRA, at that point, the $8 million would be due, and hopefully we could find, Olin and the subsidiary companies, maybe, we can work something with them to pay for it. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter will respond first to this question. The Master Plan Committee has not met in nearly a year. If elected, what will you do, if anything, to reactivate this vital town committee? And what direction do you think the Master Plan Committee should take in reusing the plan and in implementing its recommendations? Before clear on the question?
Okay.
Mr. Lingenfelter.
I think that the Master Plan Committee may need to be reorganized a little bit. I haven't really had a lot of involvement specifically in the Master Plan Committee. I know several members that are on it, but I understand that part of the problem with it's not having met may have to do with the current chairman of the Master Plan Committee, and that it may be appropriate to change, make some changes there. That's pretty much all I have on the Master Plan Committee. It does serve a valuable function, and it does need to reconstitute itself in some fashion and move forward and do its function. I really haven't been involved and don't know why it hasn't met, other than it appears as though it's sort of a problem from the top down. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, I didn't realize they hadn't met for a year, but I resigned from the Master Plan Committee about a year ago, so maybe that's why they stopped. But no, it's done a tremendous amount of work over the years, the Master Plan, and they've done a wonderful job. The problem is that usually there are so many people it becomes unwieldy, and you can't keep the people coming. The people, might feel strongly about one issue, and if they're not successful in getting that issue, they disappear. So there's been a problem keeping a group together. It's been hard. I mean, I just thought I had served my time, putting in 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure which it was, but I think that we can reactivate it, and we probably need some new blood. Thank you.
Mr. West?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I actually spoke to Carol Hamilton this afternoon, who is the Director of Planning in Wilmington, and one of the specific questions I had was regarding to the Master Plan Committee and when it's going to get reactivated. Recently, the Board of Selectmen took a hard look at the Master Plan Committee and the membership, and several members had resigned, and we opted to not appoint new members over the past several months because we wanted to see the membership be lowered because of reasons that Mr. Tai said, that people don't show up and they had problems getting a quorum, and if they don't have a quorum, they can sit down and talk, but they really can't do a heck of a lot. One of the things that I was unsuccessful to do in the Board of Selectmen was to actually convince the board that what we should do is, when we reappoint to the Master Plan Committee, is to reappoint them for a 1-year time limit. And this way here, if there were people that weren't serving or weren't showing up for the meetings, what we could do is that we could just opt to not to reappoint them over the next year. Unfortunately, that's probably one of the things that I haven't been successful in the Board of Selectmen, but what I'd like to do is that we'll see how the master plan goes over the next several months, and maybe next year, talk to the chairman and say, look, I'd like to have it as an agenda item to look at the master plan, see how successful they've been over the past year, see how their membership has been, and make appropriate changes that we may need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Yeah, it does sound unfortunate they haven't met in a year. I don't know all the reasons behind it. I'm assuming that they're volunteers and there's different things going on. And so I think it definitely has to be retooled and hopefully put together so that they get back together. Now, whether it would be the Board of Selectmen that kind of puts a little bug in their ear to get back on track. I don't know the exact reasons myself for why they haven't. Could have legitimate reasons. But it definitely needs to get back on track and go from there. And as I know they've appointed different people and they're trying to, asking people who didn't want to not go back on. And as Jay said, you probably do need new blood. I mean, they've been there for a while and you just get worn out sometimes if you keep hashing the same stuff over and over and you get discouraged. So part of it might be getting some new blood in there and keeping some of the people that want to stay. And maybe the new blood will get a little spark into the people that have been there for a while and they can continue on because they have done a great job if you look at the master plan, and they need to continue to do that for the town itself. And the people, like I said, they all have good intentions, I'm sure, and they want the best for the town of Wilmington. So I think maybe as a Board of Selectmen, we need to make sure that they get back on track and starting their meetings up again. Thank you.
Mr. Ty will respond first to this question. If elected, how would you make yourself available to your constituents? Home telephone number, cell phone number, meetings, emails, etc.
Basically, my cell phone number, which I've made available to just about anyone. The only person, I think, in Wilmington that didn't have it was Mrs. Sullivan. She had to call me, and she had to call someone else to get it, but mostly through the cell phone and email also. Thank
Mr.
you.
West?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think over the past 3 years, I've made myself well accessible to the community. My home telephone number is published, 978-658-1754. I own a business on Main Street. That number is right in the sign. And my email address, as I said, is actually the only email address listed on the town website for any member of the Board of Selectmen. A lot of times, people see me shopping at Market Basket or around the town common area with my family. I attend local church, so I've tried my best to make myself accessible to the public. I don't mind late night phone calls. I don't mind meeting people in groups. I don't mind meeting with individuals. I've had a lot of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, as some of the people in the audience are probably well aware that. But I've tried my best to make myself accessible, and I think you need to be. I've talked to people during the day. I've talked to people on the weekends. Like I say, I think that's one of the main jobs of being a selectman. I think your numbers should be published in the phone book, and I think that no matter what, I think that you should try your best to make yourself accessible to the public. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore?
I think maybe this question was pointed to me since there's been some stuff in the paper about that and not being able to contact me. First of all, when you take out papers, most people know that you have to give a phone number, which is on file with the town clerk. Second of all, if you need to talk to me, you can call me at 978-375-1842. And hopefully I'll be elected to the board, and when I am, I will put in a second phone line into the House. Due to the nature of my work is part of the reason, most of the reason of why my phone is unlisted. We all work different things, there's different circumstances about it, and hopefully the people watching tonight and in the audience can understand why I have an unlisted phone number. But I do plan on making myself accessible. Like I said, you can call my cell phone, and if you for whatever reason, any time of the day, I don't have any problems with that. But there are certain reasons due to my profession that I prefer to keep my home phone unlisted. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
Yes, I'm a longtime resident of Wilmington, and my phone has always been published in the phone book with my name. I don't plan to change that. I also have recently made arrangements to send a flyer out, And I listed an email address, and I have my phone number listed there. My wife also is at home a lot and in and around town with our son. Similar to Mr. West, we run into people at Market Basket. People have come up to us. They've seen me at selectmen meetings, come up with ask questions. Over the last 10 or 15 years, having been involved in some of the local environmental activism activities that I have been involved in, even that may not have been quite in the spotlight all the time, I've been well enough known in town, at least in that circle of people, that I do occasionally get phone calls from people that I have no idea who they are, but they've seen or heard me speak, and they look my name up in the phone book and will call me with questions specifically related to my profession as a hydrogeologist, and I often can point them in the right direction to if I can't answer their question, point them in the right direction to help them with their question. And so I actually have already been fielding questions from people, as you may imagine, more frequently over the last several weeks. I've had several unsolicited phone calls, people wanting to talk, and I plan to keep that. My wife will be available to relay questions to me. She can get a hold of me 24 hours a day, wherever I am, if I'm not home. And I'm going to continue the practice. I think it's a very important part of selectmen to be accessible to the public. Thank you.
Mr. West will respond first to this question. What do you consider to be the most critical article to appear on this year's town meeting warrant, and why?
I think probably one of the, probably the most critical article of this year's warrant is the Neighborhood Activity Center. And I think that, you know, my personal feelings, I plan on voting against it. I think it's critical because I think what's happened is that the planning board has looked at a large parcel of land, basically going from Dinette World over to Eli's on one section of 62 in North Wilmington, to the Reading Cooperative Bank down to the other Eli's shopping center. And I think that the public really hasn't had a lot of input in that process. One of the things I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen the Master Plan Committee actually make comment on it. I know that they've looked at it, you know, as a just as a area for a neighborhood activity center, but the Master Plan Committee, which is made up of, you know, a wide variety of residents in the town, really hasn't had the chance to give a lot of, you know, formal input. My understanding is that there's going to be a public hearing on April 13th at Town Hall, and I'd encourage everyone to go. I believe it's from 3:30 till 8 o'clock at night. I think it's important because that's a good section of town that there's a good amount of land in town that I feel that we really need a lot more public involvement before we look at and see how it's going to be developed. The other thing that I think is important that I'm probably the only candidate to comment about is the article regarding the purchase of the conversion of the land next to Uncle Mickey's over in Shawshene Ave over to a commercial use. I also plan on voting against that at town meeting. The reason being is that it's a 39,000 square foot parcel of land. They're planning on putting a business there, you know, a strip mall there that is only going to add more traffic congestion to that area, which is right near a school and also right near the new playground that we're going to put in. And I just think that the businesses should try to stay on the major roads, on the main streets, and, you know, leave the residential neighborhoods residential. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore.
Yes, I'm in favor of the overlay down there with the Neighborhood Activity Center, unlike Mr. West. I believe that different part of the plan is for smart growth, and I believe if it's done right down there, it'll help everybody. I understand that the neighbors down in that area are concerned of what might go there, but I believe if it's monitored and the boards do what needs to be done and understand what the whole concept is all about, and they're the ones that will control what goes in there, and we have to have faith in the boards that they will go by the bylaw and what the intent of the bylaw is, and not provide any special permits for something that the whole bylaw itself was not intended for. You have to have some faith, and I think it would generate new revenues down there better than what's currently being collected down there. So understanding that nobody wants anything in their own backyard, I think if we monitor it well and the boards keep on it, we will be able to do a good enough job to make it look good in settling to the neighborhood without there being a lot of impact. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
I guess I'll touch on that. We already did speak about the overlay article earlier. I'm not in favor of it principally because I don't believe it's had an appropriate public review process, so I'm not going to speak negatively of it on its face, other than I think that more public input was needed. I think it needs to be withdrawn this year and have more of a public involvement process into the ins and outs and pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, and perhaps come back at another town meeting. I'm also not necessarily in favor of the redevelopment of the property down near the Shawsheen School, because listening to the people speak about that, it seemed as though there were some people that were for it, some people against it, but it is next to a school, and that's a tricky question, because there were people talking about cutting through the parking lot and new curbing going in, and that was a close call for me. But I would say that I probably would lean against that. I think two other articles that I think are crucial and critical that haven't been mentioned yet well, actually are three linked articles on the wetlands, and I think that because we're running out of upland areas in this town where there are easily buildable lots, and we're trying to squeeze more and more buildable lots out of areas that are really wet and probably not necessarily appropriate for new homes, and we're trying to put as many new homes into the wet areas as that we can. There's a gentleman that's trying to weaken our wetland laws, and I think that's totally inappropriate. One of the three that he's pushing for is to perhaps have people on the conservation appointed by the Board of Selectmen rather than the town manager. That might be good, but I think that we need historical knowledge on the selectmen, so that I'm against limiting the terms, and I'm against eliminating the local bylaws that we have. We need them, because the DEP overrides the Conservation Commission as it is too often. Thank you.
Mr. Tai.
Yes, I'm in favor of the overlay district. I'm also in favor of the rezoning at the West Intermediate School, because what that does is gives the planning board site plan review, and they can correct some of the problems there. And the planning board voted 3 in favor, none against, and 1 abstention. And I would say to you that in the length of time I've been in town, this planning board, with the planning director we have, is the best that we've had in 40 years. And I think we should listen to them. And I think they've done a lot of work on the overlay district and also on this project at 129 near the Shawsheen School. As far as the wetland issues, there's a gentleman that did not want to go by the rules, and it's just sour grapes, and he's trying to take the power away from the planning board, trying to take the power away from the Board of Selectmen. He just, from the town management, wants the Board of Selectmen, and I think it's absolutely foolish, and I don't think there's a chance that they'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm disappointed that not one of you mentioned the most important thing at town meeting to be giving the town moderator a big raise. But
That was withdrawn.
yeah, for those at home, the town moderator is a volunteer position and always should be. So just to clarify that, I don't want to be misquoted. Our last question from the audience is for Mr. Fiore. Why should I vote for you, and what makes you the best candidate?
Well, it's a tough one to have to be the first one to start and not get some ideas, I can tell you that. Well, I've pretty much lived here most of my life in town since I was 3 years old. I'm raising my family in town, and I have a brother and father that also live in town, and I think I want to see the town continue to grow in the right way, and I think by being on the board, I'll be able to do that. I mean, I also think that we need to just keep on everything to make it grow well, and I think, as I said, we can do that. There are different things I think that I can bring to the board that other people can't, as far as being able to get things done. I mean, I've had 10 years on the Housing Authority, and with that 10 years, I've been able to make different contacts within the legislative, which in the town governor's office and local, that I've gotten to know some people, and by knowing these people, I think some of the issues that will be coming up, we may be able to get transitioned through smoothly without as much problems. And as far as, like, I know what the community needs. I'm always out there due to my profession, talking to people, seeing people, and learning what they have or what their ideas are and problems that they have, what they don't like, what they do like. I mean, even though, as it was mentioned about the, getting in contact with me, I think I'm out there pretty much in contact with people all the time, and I know what they need in front. I don't have to wait for the phone call. I have a pretty good idea of what people all over the town want and what they're looking for. And so I think, due to what I do, I have a good pulse on what the people are looking for, and I think with all that knowledge, I would be able to serve the town well. Thank you.
Mr. Lingenfelter?
I think one of the real big advantages I have over the other candidates is that I have no vested business interest in town. Some people might say that that's a negative against me, but based on a lot of what I've seen in recent Board of Selectmen meetings and occurrences in town, I think that's a good thing. I'm going to make all of my decisions as selectman if I get the chance, based on the facts as I see them. I'm not going to have to worry about whether or not my business is going to suffer from those. All decisions that I make are going to be made as a taxpayer, just like the majority of the people in the town. And I have a lot of experience in the environmental industry. We have a lot of serious environmental problems in this town. And although we have hired consultants to help us with those issues, from my experiences at the CAP, there was oftentimes a translation problem between the technical experts and the concerned citizens, where they knew what they wanted and they had trouble relating to the technical experts what it was that they were trying to ask them. And I was able to act as almost as a translator. And I think that I would bring a very valuable element to the Board of Selectmen as someone that has no vested interest, so that nobody, I don't believe, could get to me with any kind of an argument as to why I should do something in my best interest. Everything that I would vote for would be in the best interest of the town as I saw it. I have a lot of experience to help deal with these issues and would be able to, I think, help relate the information that we're receiving from our technical experts to the other board members, and also use negotiation skills that I've learned in dealing with environmental attorneys and distressed properties to try to eliminate some of the problems that we've seen at board meetings where people are just are back and forth arguing, and to try to shift those arguments into other ways to just make them go away as much as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Tai?
Why should you vote for me? How about because I'm twice as old as every one of my opponents? No, I've been in town my whole life, almost my whole life, and I've served on Finance Committee, School Committee, Master Plan, Recreation Commission, and I know what's going on, and I'm basically retired now, and I have plenty of time, and I'm looking for something to do Monday nights. Thank you.
Mr. West?
Why should you vote for me? I think probably the last 3 years of experience that I've achieved for the board helps me in what I've been able to do for the community. As far as, for the past 3 years, we've had some contentious meetings. I've tried not to be part of the contentious part of the meetings, as we talked earlier today, tonight rather, that people say, well, gee, I might be passive, but I think that I'd rather, use my energies to listen to the issues, stay away from the personalities, and vote what I feel is best for the residents of the community. I think that over the past 3 years, I've achieved a balance in the board. As far as, my opponent saying that I have a vested business interest, past 3 years, I've never had an ethics complaint or anything like that thrown at me, so that in relation to any of my business, which is a real estate business, which I'm state licensed. I'm not licensed by the local community. Although I shouldn't say that, I have a business license from the town of Wilmington. But I think that owning both a business and being a lifelong resident here, I think that I have a vested overall interest for both the residential and the business community. Having a business in town, I think helps me as far as the working with the local Chamber of Commerce, and also understanding from a business standpoint, the things that Wilmington has to offer the business community as well. Again, the past 3 years, I've tried my best to be as accessible as possible. Again, my number's published in the book, my website's my email address is out there, and I've tried my best to accommodate everyone. I can take a call in the morning, I can take a call in the evening. I'd be happy to meet with the resident, and I'm not afraid to spend the time that it needs. So other than that, why should you vote for me? I think I'm the best candidate for this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes our audience participation portion of the program. Before we get to closing statements, just a reminder that the election is Saturday, April 15th. Polls are open from 10 in the morning till 8 p.m. And the following Saturday is the annual town meeting, where we will vote on 39 articles. The town meeting starts at 10:30 in the morning and will be held Saturday, April 22nd at the Larry Cushing Memorial Gymnasium at Wilmington High School. Closing statements. Mr. Lingenfelter will start our closing statement section of the program first, and each candidate has 2 minutes for their closing statements.
Okay. There are a lot of good, excuse me, there are a lot of good people who live in Wilmington, and they deserve a better town government. We have town officials that don't always treat the people with the respect that they need, and some people are treated with favoritism, which I don't think is quite appropriate. I myself, as people have known, have had my own issues with the Board of Health and the Health Director, and I think I was vindicated, and I think I've dealt with them appropriately. I think there also was a group of people in town, the Unity people, who have had questions that went unanswered by the Health Department and the Board of Health in regards to the cancer clusters in town. And I think that they also deserve to have had answers on a more timely basis than they have apparently received them. There also seems to be a problem in town with the building practices of the building, the practice of the building department. We have apparently the building inspectors under investigation by the state. I've also raised questions about the building practices at 20 Concord Street. I brought my complaints to the Board of Selectmen, and I received a communication from the town that said that the town manager was directed to look into those issues. And then whether or not that happened, he said that it did, but the second part of the letter said that he was supposed to report back to the selectmen, and he didn't do that, which is another example of where he kind of picks and chooses when he follows the direction of the Board of Selectmen and when he doesn't. The Board of Appeals, there was recently a building was torn down, and they're trying to get a permit for the demolition, and they didn't have it when it was torn down. A lot of things happened. The Board of Selectmen just needs to be more proactive in preventing these things from occurring. I'm running for selectman because I feel I can make a difference, and I believe I can do a better job than my incumbent. We need strong, decisive leadership. We've got severe problems in town, and I can believe I can provide that. I respectfully hope, ask that you give me the 3 years to be your selectman. Thank you.
Mr. Ty.
Yes, first I'd like to thank WCTV and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. And we've discussed many, many issues here tonight, and the number one thing is taxes. That's what we have to look at, and I could go on and on about accomplishments and things like that, but I don't think it's necessary. And I promise I'll be able to stay awake for all the selectmen's meetings. Thank you very much.
Mr. West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I'd also like to thank the reporters from the various newspapers, you, Mr. Moderator, WCTV, and the League of Women Voters for putting on this debate, and also to my 3 opponents for wanting to run against me. I think that one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of months is that, it's nice that, it's nice to be an elected official, but it's nice that, that somebody else wants your seat, so it helps you strive to do a better job in wanting that seat, in wanting to keep that seat, rather. A little bit about me personally. I'm a lifelong resident here of Wilmington. I've lived here for about 43 years. I'm a product of the public school system, a graduate of 1980 from Wilmington High School. As far as my college, I went to University of Lowell, which is now UMass Lowell, where I got my bachelor's degree in business, and then went on to Western New England College, where I received my master's in business administration in 1992. I'm married to my wife Karen. We've been married for 13 years now. We have 2 wonderful children, our daughter Colleen and our son Frankie, who's age 7. I think that I've been a proactive voice for the community. I think I've been a proactive voice for many of the issues that have happened in Wilmington. I try not to be contentious. I try not to get into the mix of arguments that have occurred between various members and various times on the board. And again, I think accessibility is job one. I've been accessible, and I will continue to make myself accessible. Lastly, I'd like to publicly thank both my wife and my kids for allowing me the time away from them to be at events such as tonight and on the campaign trail, and also helping to work on behalf of the community. Probably the last thing is I'd like to thank the voters and the people who supported me 3 years ago. I'd like to thank the people that continue to support me, and I look forward to seeing everybody on April 15th at the polls. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Mr. Fiore.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I also want to thank everybody involved in putting this on tonight, from the moderator, reporters, WCTV, Women League of Voters, and everybody else. As I've stated earlier, I have I live in town. I have my 3 boys and my wife, and we live in town, and I'm raising them in town. I plan on staying. I don't plan on going anywhere. And I want the best for the community, not selfish reasons for my own family, but I think they've been on the right track, and they're doing the correct thing as far as all the people being involved and trying to make this town as great as it is, and to continue doing that. I was going to talk about some other things, but there's an issue I'd like to bring up more so than about myself that I think we haven't talked about that is going to be one of my priorities. And that has to do with field space in town, with all the youth groups going, and they're all exploding and growing immensely. And there's just not enough of it around. I think part of, if I get in, and hopefully I will, that I will look into that along with all the other things I've mentioned, as far as getting local aid to help with the elders, trying to reserve some of that. But we need to have different things with the field space. There's different ways of doing things, whether it be getting the new artificial turf so we can use the fields longer, we can get more people on them, maybe some lighting in some of these other fields that would be, so we could have extend the hours just to accommodate everybody, because I think anybody in the audience or out there looking knows I have 3 of my children in sports, and there's just not enough room. And that's going to be something I think that's going to be up and coming as a big concern, and I think we need to get a jump on it. If we don't get a jump on it, it's going to cost us even more down the road. With that said, I want to thank everybody once again here, and I hope to see the people also out at the polls on April 15th, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. As you've seen here this evening, there are 4 candidates seeking your votes for 1 term for 3 years on the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. There are also candidates seeking a number of other offices that will be on the ballot on April 15th as well. 2 3-year terms to the Wilmington School Committee, 2 2-year terms to the Wilmington School Committee, 1 3-year term as town moderator, 1 5-year term to the Housing Authority, 1 5-year term to the Redevelopment Authority, and 1 3-year term to the Shawshene Regional Vocational School Committee. I encourage everyone to go out and participate by voting for your favorite candidate. I'd like to thank the members of our press, Mr. Tucker from the Wilmington Advocate, Mr. Bjork from the Wilmington Town Crier, and Ms. Mayor Hodol from the Lowell Sun for participating this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates for being here this evening, and good luck at the election, gentlemen. And thank the WCTV and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event, and our studio audience for your participation as well, and most especially to you, the voters of the town of Wilmington, for listening this evening. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Hello, my name is George Lingerfelter, and I've taken this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about myself and why I feel I would be a better choice of selectman than the incumbent or my fellow selectman candidates for the current seat on the Board of Selectmen. Although I've lived in Wilmington since the age of 2, a lot of folks in town may not know me. My parents moved to Wilmington in 1961, and I was educated by the Wilmington Public School System. I graduated from high school in 1977. I put myself through college working at the Bruce's Lumberyard driving a forklift. I've been professionally employed since 1987, and I feel as though of the selectman candidates currently running for the seat on the Board of Selectmen, I'm the most qualified to help steer Wilmington through its environmental problems. My primary hobbies are scuba diving and underwater photography, and associated with that is outdoor photography of places that I've been on scuba diving trips. A dive that I made with 14 other divers. Only 4 of us actually made the dive. We made it to the buoy line and made the dive, and the other 11 divers were blown by the current for miles. And while the dive boat went off to find the other 11 people, they lost track of the 4 of us that actually made the dive, and they began a search for us. And in Kenya, that's not call out the U.S. Coast Guard, that's call out the local fishing fleet. And it was kind of an ordeal for us, and we had to hang out there and talk in scuba diver sign language for several hours before we were actually picked up. And it just makes me proud to be an American and proud to live in Wilmington that we have such resources as the U.S. Coast Guard, and then here in Wilmington we have a fine police and fire department to call on. I've been on my own since age 22, when my mother died at the age of 41 from cancer. I know there are a lot of folks in South Wilmington that have been experiencing a higher incidence of cancer than one might expect. As a selectman, I would like to do what I can to try to initiate a culture with the Wilmington Health Department and Board of Health that if a concerned citizen or a group of concerned citizens come forward with what appear to be legitimate complaints and concerns about environmental conditions which may be affecting or impacting these higher cancer incidents that we're seeing, they should be provided with adequate answers, and they should be taken seriously. Maybe it was because I knew my grandparents longer than my mother. I think they really helped to shape the person I became much more than my mother, particularly my grandmother. And I think that we need to listen to our grandparents more and try to learn from their experiences, which I think that too many of us today don't do that. We need to pay better attention to the maintenance of our existing public buildings so that they'll serve us as long as possible and eliminate the need for building new facilities, at least in the short term. We're all budgeting to pay our taxes, and as your selectman, I'll work to keep them as low as possible. But the short-term costs of defending our long-term quality of life in this town, specifically in regard to Olin Chemical, the Maple Meadow landfill, and the New England Transrail proposal, should not be confused with the cost of the everyday operation of the town government. I support the current warrant article before the town to save the Butters Farm. Owner-occupied affordable housing is something Wilmington needs more of. We don't need more high-density 40B developments. One of the things that I'm aware of is that we have a lot of accessory apartments in this town. I would like to see some kind of a plan developed by which the owners of these affordable units could be encouraged to list them as affordable housing. That may require some kind of a tax break or another kind of initiative program. It was not until I was appointed to the Citizens Advisory Panel by the Board of Selectmen that I was able to serve on a town board. I feel as though hiring Geo Insight was one of the most important things that the town has done. It's changed the way that regulatory agencies have looked at the town of Wilmington. That Geo Insight gave Wilmington the professional credibility that we were missing. Prior to Geo Insight being hired by the town, largely those reports went uncommented on, and that thus was passive approval to what the consultants were saying, and Wilmington did not have an appropriate voice to respond to those issues. We need a Board of Selectmen that will rally the town into a unified group rather than the divisiveness we're seeing today. I'm running for selectman because I feel I can make a difference. I will provide a fresh approach without a self-serving agenda because I have no business interest in town. All of the votes I'll be making as a selectman will be made on what I believe to be in the best interest of the town of Wilmington and all of its citizens as a fellow taxpayer. We need strong, decisive leadership in Wilmington because Wilmington's facing some of its most severe problems in its history. I believe I can provide that. I respectfully request that you give me the next 3 years to be your selectman. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Frank West. I currently serve as a member of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, and I'm up for re-election along with 3 other opponents in the upcoming election, which will be held in Wilmington on April 15th. Polls will be open from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. A bit about myself personally. Number one, as I said earlier, I currently I've served for the past 3 years as a member of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen, and I've enjoyed working for the community, our community, where I've been a lifelong resident. I grew up here in Wilmington, and I graduated from Wilmington High School in the class of 1980. I further went on to University of Lowell, where I received both my associate's degree and bachelor's degree in business, and then went on to Western New England College, where I received my master's in business administration in the year 1992. I've been married for the past 13 years, and my wife Karen West and I have 2 lovely children. Our daughter Colleen is 10 years old, and our son Frank Jr. will be 8 this coming May. As I said earlier, I'm a lifelong resident here, so I'm aware of a lot of the issues that have gone on in Wilmington, both in many years past and also in recent memory. Some of the issues that I've been intimately involved in are our environmental issues. New England Transrail proposal, a lot of residents have heard about. I'm against it. The proper capping of the Maple Meadows landfill, I'm for. And holding Olin Chemical and the chemical companies down in South Wilmington responsible for the contamination of our wells, that's one thing that I'm for also. I'm one of the members of the Board of Selectmen who both found and appointed the current town council, Paul Durensis from Deutsch Williams in Boston. I believe they're a strong council and have worked not only our environmental legal issues, but all of our legal issues to the utmost respect and to the best of their ability. I'm proud of that appointment, and we'll be looking forward to the reappointing town council in the upcoming weeks. I also look around the town, and I look at a lot of different things around here with pride. One of the things that I've been working on is the Butters Farm. I think that the Wilmington should purchase the Butters Farmhouse with the Historical Commission and do the rehab work that the Historical Commission wants to do, and then sell the property back to a prospective homeowner. I believe that it's part of Wilmington's past, and I think that we owe it to our children and future generations to save a house that's been there for over 320 years. One of the things that I'm against in town in the upcoming town meeting is the rezoning of land at the Shawsheen area to have a store, a strip mall basically, right near the Shawsheen School and our brand new playground that hopefully I will be supporting the town meeting and hopefully will be built by this fall. I think as far as the meetings go, I've been fair, I've been honest. A lot of people have accused me of being passive. But what I try not to do is I try not to get in the bickering that has prolonged the meetings that we've had. I save my speeches for the vote. I ask questions that are relevant. And I try to focus on the issues that involve our community. I look forward to the growth of Wilmington, but I think it should be managed growth. One of the things that I'm against is the rezoning, the overlay district at the neighborhood activity centers in North Wilmington. I don't believe that the planning board should be the final say in that area. I think that the zoning board of appeals should ultimately have the responsibility for working any new construction or redevelopment in that area, as well as other areas in our town. I look with pride with my service in the past 3 years as a member of our board, and I find that one of the things that I pride myself on is my accessibility to our residents. My home number, 978-658-1754, has been listed in the phone book for many years. My email address is the only email address for any member of the Board of Selectmen on our town website. I think accessibility is job one to being a selectman in the community. I've taken calls late at night, early in the morning. I've met people for coffee over at a few of our Dunkin' Donuts over the years, or at people's houses and gone over their personal concerns, or neighborhood concerns, and tried to work with them to try to solve whatever their issue are. I look forward to meeting many of the residents in the next couple of weeks that this campaign will be running, and I look forward also to the campaign itself, and I look with great pride on Election Day when hopefully I'll be sworn in as a re-elected candidate as a member of our Board of Selectmen. I look forward to seeing everybody at the polls on April 15th, and I thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Good evening. My name is James J. Ty. I'm a candidate for the 3-year term Board of Selectmen. There's one term available, and there are 4 candidates. I'd like to spend a few minutes just telling you where I'm coming from and why I'm running. I've been a 65-year resident of the town. I live on Glen Road. I graduated from Wilmington High School in 1951. I captained my class in 51, captain baseball, co-captain baseball, co-captain softball. I have 7 children, and after I graduated, I spent 4 years on the finance committee in the town of Wilmington in the 70s. I then ran for school committee in the 80s and served a 1-year term, which was approximately 4 years there also. After that, I was on the Recreation Commission, and I also served 4 years on the Master Plan Committee, and just resigned from that approximately 1 year ago. I coached Tewksbury, the Fitchburg State girls softball team, and I had 2 men's national champion softball teams that played in 84 and 94, so I have a pretty good background. But I guess what we want to talk about today is taxes. Although we have a wonderful town, right now the tax share is not even. Right now we pay 58% of the tax that is paid by residents and 42% by industry. In the year 2000, it was 50% residential, 50% industrial. This formula is actually set by the state. So I'm proposing that we get together and sit down with our state legislators and see what we can do with this, because this is really, really hurting us. As I said, we've had a 40% increase in taxes in the past 5 years. That is a lot. That averages 8% a year. I also understand that because of the increase, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we've got increases in fuel costs that are skyrocketing, but the 2 major things that we have to take a look at is unfunded pensions and health care for all the town employees. And I think that if we spend some time and get together with some other towns, maybe we can pool our resources and do something about this. As far as the town meeting is concerned, there are 2 or 3 articles that are very important. I want to let you know just where I'm coming from. Article 11 is proposing $55,000 for a study as to where we should put a fire station in North Wilmington. This is long overdue. The people at the town meeting have said, we need a fire station. So that's Article 11. Another article that's very important is a neighborhood activity center in North Wilmington. This is highly recommended by the planning board. Also, the results of this have come from the Master Plan Committee. So this is something that we should have to keep the town moving forward. Another issue is affordable housing in Wilmington. Crystal Commons was just approved, which gets us above the 10%. If you know, or if you don't know, the 40B is a state-mandated program. And what has happened is there are no places for the young people to live. So the state has come up with a program that actually forces every town to have 10% of their stock affordable. With the Crystal Commons being approved last week, we are now at that 10%. So at this point, when anyone else comes forward with a housing project, the town has a lot more to say as to the density. But up until we reached that 10%, we were pretty, we just had to go along with it. We had the opportunity to turn it down, but if we turned down the project, it went to the state, and the state just overruled the town. And we've been that route before on a couple of occasions, and you're better off to try to work with the developer to work it that way. So in closing, I'd just like to thank you, and I'd like to thank WCTV for the opportunity.